So very good evening to everyone. A warm welcome to our distinguished guest, YB KJ. We all know him very well, but just in case the people who don't know YB, I'll do a quick introduction of YB and then we'll get into it. So YB Khairy Jamaluddin is the Minister of Youth and Sports and a Member of Parliament representing the Rembau constituency in Negeri Sembilan. He's also the leader of UMNO Youth and the chairman of Barisan National Youth. Prior to entering politics, he worked as a journalist, policy aide, and investment banker. Khairy was educated at the universities of Oxford and London. The World Economic Forum in Davos selected him as a young global leader in 2005, and he was made an Asia 21 Fellow by the Asia Society in 2006. Khairy was also elected as visiting fellow to the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies in 2002. In 2012, he was appointed as the chairman of the National Entrepreneurs Development Corporation. So this one is more recent. During the recent ICYL International Conference for Young Leaders that Dr. Wasita organized, he mentioned that SE was not about charity, but it's about building an organization that brings social impact. He believes that KBS has a vital role to play in encouraging progressive young leaders and to promote the development of social entrepreneurship. Currently, he serves as an airborne paratrooper and commander of the 508 Regiment in Malaysian Territorial Army. He is married to Nori Abdullah and they have 3 sons, if I pronounce this correctly, Jibril Cougar Ali, Timur Puma Abdullah, and Raif Leo Evros. Is that correct? Not bad means not right. Without much ado, please welcome YBKJ. So YB, I was asked to ask this question. Where did the name for your kids come from?
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Ihan. And thank you very much to MaGIC for inviting me to this session this afternoon. This is my 3rd time here to MaGIC. The first time I was here was when MaGIC was launched by Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib and President Barack Obama. Second time I was here was for a cycling event, I think that took place with KSP, Tan Sri Irwan. And this is my 3rd time, and in a very short period of time, I'm so impressed with what Cheryl and her team have done at MaGIC in trying to make this a very conducive environment for startups and for young entrepreneurs. Big round of applause for Cheryl and her team. I'm supposed to start off on a light note. Thank you for the soft question. First question, soft question. Yeah, my kids. I've got 3 sons. My eldest son, Jibril, he's 7. Second, Timur, he's 6. And Rafe, he's just 3 months. All boys. So
That must keep you very busy.
Well, it keeps my wife busy. I pretend to be busy around them. But no, it's true. I mean, let me show you just an observation before I go into the names. You know, those of us who have had kids, I've always asked this question. You know, a lot of parents, they say, when we have kids, when you have a newborn, when you just get a baby, you lose a lot of sleep. So I was thinking to myself, okay, the mother has to get up to feed the baby, but why does the father have to lose any sleep? So yeah, I made the mistake of asking my wife, well, why is it that I have to get up? She said, no, you're supposed to get up just to, you know, keep me company. So I said, oh, okay, so he's going to get up, you know, pretend, burp the baby, you know. But anyway, they have very peculiar names for one, but that's because we wanted to find unique names. But they have very peculiar nicknames. Eldest is Cougar, Puma, and Leo, as in the lion. I don't know how it came about. It came about because we like the name Cougar. Now I have to explain to my eldest son, Cougar also means a very attractive older woman. But you know, it's you know, we liked it. It's cute, and you know, spirit of a cat, big cat. So you know, it's caught on.
We were all guessing about it because we thought, oh, maybe because of the Harimau. So you're going with the cat theme, you know, following from KBS logo, which is a Harimau theme. So we
Of
thought
course,
that was
of
where it
course-
came from.
Yeah, but of course I had my kids long before I became KBS minister, so the timing wouldn't work out there.
So the other question that I got from one of my team member was, they were curious, if you were not a minister, what would you be doing?
Great question.
Or what would you want to be doing?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question to ask politicians, what they would be doing if they weren't a politician. I was, as you said in your introduction, I worked briefly as a journalist. I worked in government as an aide to a minister. I was in banking. And I thought, my true love was, of course, writing. And I suppose if I wasn't a minister, I'd very much imagined myself to be a war correspondent somewhere. I went to Afghanistan when the Taliban were ruling. I loved that experience of being on the ground, writing, dispatches, articles from the ground. I had a wonderful time. But my true love, from the first time I did it when I was 3 years old, right until today, where I have some power and influence over this, is football. Soccer, as in bola sepak. I love the sport. I love everything about the sport. And if I wasn't a minister, I think I would be a footballer. I'm good. I was good. I played for university. I'm not terribly good. But judging by the crap state of Malaysian football, I think I'd be able to walk into the national team, no problem.
I thought you were responsible for our sports team.
I'm responsible for the young kids who won recently in Spain, under 13 team. The older team, that's FAM.
So, YB, your mom is an active volunteer. Is that something that she encouraged the kids to do as well when you guys were growing up?
She never forced us to do anything, even in terms of studying. She didn't force any of us. I lost my father when I was 16, just before I did my secondary school exams, about 3 months before I did my secondary school exams. So a lot of my formative older years was just with my mother, and she was a big influence on me. She didn't force me to do anything, but I saw her. She's an activist. She's an NGO. She does a lot of work for women's organization, and that obviously rubs off onto you. I mean, the reason I chose politics is because I've seen her contributing to society, being an activist, being an NGO all her life, and she always said, it's worthwhile contributing back to society. I always said that she's a frustrated politician, never became a politician, so she's living her dreams through me. In many ways, the reason I'm in politics is because of that. Yeah.
Can you briefly describe some of the things that she was working on, or some of the issues that she was campaigning for?
Lately, she's been doing a lot of work for human trafficking. As you know, Malaysians' ranking for human trafficking has dropped, so we're at the lower tier right now. So she did a conference on human trafficking recently. Next year, she's got a big conference going for environment and the role of young people and society, and how we can create a more sustainable society for sustainable living and protecting the environment. So she goes from issues to issues, leveraging off women's network, especially in the Pan-Pacific and Asian region.
Great. Just before we continue, all of you guys were given a piece of paper, right? So if you have any question, make sure you write them down and put your hand up, so one of the MaGIC staff member along the corridors can come down and collect those papers from you and hand it to me as well. So now we're getting to more the youth in Malaysia. What are some of the social problems or issues or challenges that you see Malaysian youth face?
Oh my God, I mean, how long have we got?
Plenty of time for you.
I think, young people in Malaysia have a lot of potential. And I always say, and I always repeat the cliche that you always hear, which is that our greatest strength and asset is our youth. We are a young population. 70% of our population are below the age of 40. So you have a huge amount of young people and a big demographic dividend bulge that we will gain in the next few years if you play our cards right. But I think the biggest concerns for young people today are economic concerns. I think a lot of young people feel the squeeze. I think a lot of people, young people, feel the effects of higher costs of living. It's not just in Malaysia, but it's all around the world. If you go all around the world, the inflationary environment is such that young people find it extremely difficult to make ends meet. And you will know this story, that your parents were able to buy houses, they were able to invest in houses and own assets. But it's very difficult for young people to do the same today, especially to buy houses in respectable or decent areas, strategic areas. Very, very difficult. So I think the big challenge for government is how do we enable young people to meet the challenges, notwithstanding the present economic squeeze that they feel. One way of doing this is, of course, continuing to subsidize things. But subsidizing things, it's in the long run not sustainable. So what you really need to do is to build an economy where you generate jobs and high-paying jobs. That's the only way forward. And it's subsidies and continuing to prop things up by assisting young people, it's not going to be sustainable because you spend a lot of money. You spend a lot of money, and that's a lot of money that is invested where the returns are not clear. You'd rather be spending on education. You'd rather be spending on skills training, but creating jobs so that young people are sustainable and that those jobs are bringing in salaries which will enable young people to live a proper, decent life given the inflation environment. So to me, the government's on the right track. It's very difficult. We're trying to create about 3 million jobs over the next 5 years, higher paying jobs, not jobs where it's blue collar, not jobs to replace foreign workers, but higher paying jobs so that you can cope with the increased cost of living. We also have to make sure that young people are not left behind. We always talk about creating jobs, we always talk about creating opportunities for young people at the highest achievement level within their cohort, people who go to university, people who have degrees, people who have masters, people who are qualified. But my big issue is we have to ensure that every single young Malaysian fulfills their potential. There are young people who cannot go to university. There are young people who should not be going to university because they do not have skills which are suitable for an academic environment. So what do we do with them? We have to increase the number of TVET, for instance, training in vocational, technical and vocational education and training, by about 40% over the next 5 years to cater for young people who have hands-on skills, who have potential, for instance, in vocational training, in technical education, but are not suitable for education or academic education. So we need to expand the number of places for young people who cannot go to university. But it doesn't mean that they have to be consigned to a life of low expectations and low income. So you have to create those the opportunities for all young Malaysians, whether or not they are academically inclined or non-academically inclined. And it's not just about channeling people into engineering, into technical jobs. We are also trying to create a civilization. Young people who are talented in music, in the arts, in the performing arts, in the fine arts, they should have an opportunity as well. Because building a nation is not just building an economy. It's also about building a civilization, which is about building culture and rewarding young people who are talented in that.
Or we can channel them to MaGIC's coding boot camps.
Absolutely.
So this is a question from the crowd, and it's very relevant as well. Chief, lately we've been noticing that many Malaysians are commenting emotionally regarding religious and unity-based issues, which logically doesn't make sense at all in this modern developing world. Is this due to the divide and rule policy, or Malaysians are no more wise and not openly accepting towards modern world progressions? Your view on this, please.
I think it's because of several factors. I think one big factor of why we see a lot more discussion and divisiveness about religion, ethnicity, all these identity markers that make us Malaysian is because of, it's more pronounced because of social media. I think previously a lot of people were saying these things, but it was seldom aired publicly. But now everybody can say anything on Facebook, everybody can say anything on Twitter, everybody can say anything and record it on YouTube. So when you have that, you have a lot of people who say things which are hurtful to other people. Previously, this would be contained because you want to be published in the newspaper, the editor would decide what will go in and what will not go in. Now things become viral because somebody wrote it and people forwarded it or reposted it or shared it or retweeted it. and it just becomes a big issue. So many cases over the last 2-3 years of sensitive comments or comments that were insightful or hurtful came because of social media. So I think one is that we have to understand that social media has an impact on this. What do? Do you censor social media? Do you control social media? No, of course that's not what you do. You have to do two things. One, there is legislation, of course. We still have the Sedition Act. So for very, very serious cases of race hate, very, very serious cases of hate speech, where you incite people to do violent things against people of one religion or people of one ethnicity, then the law has to come in and you have to lock people up. And I think that's fair, because in a multiracial, multi-religious, multi-ethnic environment like Malaysia, it's very, very combustible. But relying on laws alone is not enough. What are you going to do? You're going to arrest everybody? Soon there'll be nobody left to arrest. I mean, you have to ensure that it's not just legislation, because you can't lock everybody up, And sometimes you don't need to lock people up. Sometimes the full force of the law should only be applied when it's a really, really serious case of race hate or religion, inciting religious hate. But other than that, I think one big thing that we can do is how society reacts. Society should ridicule and censure, not censor, but censure, as in they should tell off people who do this. And that's the best way of doing it. When Malaysians in general, when the majority of Malaysians say, look, you've written really something silly, something stupid, which is unacceptable to the majority of Malaysians, and ridicule that person online intellectually, and ridicule him in a way that is not offensive, but ridicule him with facts, ridicule him with compassion, with empathy. That's really how you change societies. Legislation alone, locking people up, yes, it's a sense of fear, but at the end of the day, it's about changing people's mindset, changing cultures, and that can only happen when the majority says, look, you're out of line. And for everybody to say that, I mean, imagine in a situation where you're at school, in the playground, the best way to get somebody in line or somebody who's out of line to behave at school is through peer pressure. It's the same thing in society. If we can act in a mature way and say, this is not on, then you go a long way in building a more mature society, a society that's able to accept diversity and respect that diversity.
Absolutely. Now with the smartphone, everyone's now a walking and talking media, right? So onto a less serious note, someone just asked you, and he wrote that his name is Xavier. He's a Chinese guy sitting in between a Malay dude and an Indian dude.
Where are you?
Xavier, where are you, Xavier?
Where are you? I won't lock you up. Where are you?
There he is up the top there.
Okay. Right.
So his question is, where did you buy your socks? It's cute.
I don't know where I got these ones from, but I have an affinity for colorful socks, as some of you may know. Because being a minister, you have to dress in a suit most of the time. And you're really restricted, with suit colors. I can't possibly wearing a red suit. I mean, people will lock me up being crazy if I wore a red suit. So the only place I can display my originality and individuality are my underpants and socks. Obviously, I can't show you my underpants.
And one of them is visible, obviously.
Just one's visible, for now.
For now, right. So, onto a bigger question. What are your ambitions for the ministry over the next few years, or what can we expect from the ministry?
Yeah, so the Ministry of Youth and Sports is one of the social ministries. We run a lot of social development work. It's a small ministry in terms of budgetary allocation.
A very important one.
But it's a very
future generation.
High-profile ministry in terms of the attention that we get. So specifically coming to youth, I think the priorities that we have is, one, we have a philosophy in my ministry of for the youth, from the youth. So what we want to do is, it's actually a bit counterintuitive. Ministries like to do things and control things. That's what the traditional ministry does. A traditional government ministry likes to do things, likes to control things. My ministry, we want to get out of the way of young people, because we believe that young people decide best on their own. So, for instance, in terms of youth development, one of the latest programs that we've revamped is an old program called Rakan Muda. Now, Rakan Muda, I don't know how many of you have been involved in Rakan Muda programs when you were much younger. But in the old days, Rakan Muda programs was that we designed it that you came to a program, we run the program, you do the program, and you go back. So it was very government run. So we know best, you come, you enjoy the show, and then you go back. So now we don't believe that anymore, because we don't believe that government knows best anymore. We believe that young people should drive it. So Rakan Muda now, it's all about self-starting. So if young people have an idea, they have a talent, and that talent can be utilized to change society. Very much similar to the social enterprise philosophy, but using talent instead. So it's about cultural entrepreneurship, it's about activism, and how that activism can change communities. Then we will fund you. So it's about getting out of the way, it's about letting young people design their own programs, and it's about letting young people come up with the content. So my ministry, it's all about empowering young people through the programs that we have, through the training that we do, through our Perdana Fellows program, through the Youth Parliament, and through Rakan Muda. And it's basically really empowering young people and getting out their way.
So very much about active participation, civic participation. A personal question here, dear YB, what drives you?
What drives me is that I believe that this country can do better. I believe that this country can do so much better, which is not to say that we've not done well. We've done tremendously well, and I think the record speaks for itself. But I think that this country has so much more potential. I always use the analogy of the EPL, English Premier League. Malaysia right now, we are middle of a table club. We are like a Tottenham Hotspurs, where we have the potential to be the best. Manchester United. We have the potential to be come on, yeah, exactly. Thank you. So it's like I said just now, my philosophy, young people, is for young people to fulfill their potential. What drives me is for Malaysia to fulfill its potential, because I think we can be a top-notch country. I don't think, and I make it a practice for myself in my work, I never compare Malaysia, because a lot of policy documents always says Malaysia has done so much better than Bangladesh and Ghana. I think to myself, why are we comparing ourselves to Bangladesh and Ghana? So I always make it a practice for me to benchmark up. I always compare Malaysia. People say, you can't compare to Singapore. Singapore like a postage stamp, so small, you know. But why not? I mean, you should compare yourself to countries which are doing better, are more efficient, growing at a faster rate. So compare yourself, benchmark yourselves against the Koreas of the world. Benchmark yourselves against the Singapores of the world, and stop dumbing down our ambitions and saying, Malaysia. So that's one. And the other thing is, I suppose on a personal note, politics is all about naysayers. People saying that you can't do it, a lot of critics saying that, you'll never get there. And I think as much as it's sometimes a negative motivation, but the motivation to defy expectations and to prove the critics wrong. And to prove the haters wrong. I think that's also something that drives me. Not because I want to rub it in their faces later, but because I think it's very important that you draw positive energy from negative thoughts. Negative thoughts can bring you down, but if you turn it into something positive and drive you into doing something good, I think it can be a strong motivation.
Something related to that from a crowd as well. What are the top 3 areas would you focus on if and when you become Prime Minister?
For obvious reasons of political longevity, I'm not going to answer that question. But I'm not going to answer that question phrase as it is, because that's ridiculous. But I think top 3 priorities of any Prime Minister. Let's put it that way.
Any Prime Minister.
That's safe. Yeah, that's safe. Top 3 priorities for any Prime Minister. I think one, and this really is something very, very close to my heart, and close to every Malaysian's heart. And just to give you an example, we recently closed our applications for our Perdana Fellows program, the 3rd year for the Perdana Fellows program, which is basically where we get young, bright Malaysians to become interns for cabinet ministers. I see a Perdana Fellow there, Zaim.
We hired one of them as well.
Oh, really? Oh,
Sam?
fantastic.
Sam,
Yeah.
are you in the room?
Yeah. Okay.
Sam.
Sam's there as well. Yeah. So when they apply, they don't just have to give their CVs, but we also ask them to write an essay about the most pressing public policy issue in Malaysia. We don't tell them what. We just give them a blank canvas. You can choose whatever you want. And more than, I think, 3/4 of the applicants will write about education. So this is something very close to my heart, which is education. So the number one priority is education and how we continue to improve our education system. We have a wonderful blueprint that was launched last year, a higher education blueprint that was launched this year. The blueprint is fantastic, but Malaysia's biggest problem is great blueprint, but bad execution. So we have to make sure that the execution is good. And I have skin in the game for education. I put my eldest son in public school because I want him to tell me what's wrong with the education system.
He's a spy.
And the other thing is, the best economic policy is a sound education system.
Absolutely.
If you want to have good economic policy, it's not so much how you run your fiscal, it's not whether or not you bring down your fiscal deficit, it's not really how you run the current account position, that's all important. But the underlying fundamental strength to an economy is an education system. So education is number one. Secondly, I think it's about doing a little bit of crystal ball gazing. I think we've not done enough about future scenario planning. We have to do a lot more future scenario planning. Our present trajectory is based on 5-year economic plans. Government recently launched the 11th Malaysia Plan. That's for 5 years. But we don't know what's going to happen in 2030. We don't know what's going to happen in 2040. Nobody's really sat down. I know there's a small group doing it right now, but it hasn't been done on a broad scale, on a wide scale. People sitting down and see, what is our demographic profile in 2030, 2040? Have we got enough hospitals to deal with an aging population by the year 2040? Have we got enough in our pension system to deal with people who retire by 2040? Remember that Malaysia is still a fully pensioned government service. Singapore has moved away from that. If you retire from the civil service in Singapore, they don't pay a pension until you die anymore. They just give you a gratuity and that's it. You're on your own. But in Malaysia, because we're still a quasi-welfare state, everybody who retires from government service given a pension until they pass away. This is going to mount up. We haven't counted the amount of our entitlement into the future. So future scenario planning is important. Third is sustainable energy. Sustainable energy. Where do we go from here? I mean, this is really about the future. I take 3 things which have long trajectories. Yeah, sustainable energy. How do we continue to fuel our growth into the future? I say this because if Petronas doesn't keep on acquiring oil fields overseas, in 30, 40 years, our wells might be dry. So we will be dry of oil in 30, 40 years. If you don't find more reserves, if Petronas Carigali doesn't even find more oil reserves in our territorial waters, we'll be out of oil. Now, we've been dependent on oil for a very long time. We've been dependent on oil to fuel us, and we've been dependent on our oil to give revenue to the government. About 30% of the government revenue comes from PITA, or from Petronas, petroleum income tax, dividends, royalties from Petronas. So where are we going to fund? Where is that energy coming from? Is it going to be nuclear? Is it going to be sustainable? We have to ask these tough questions.
That's very fascinating because, yeah.
There's no restriction on clapping. You can clap as much as you want.
And cheers, well, like I said, it's a very chilled session. So it's very fascinating because often people ask us what's the common themes when we go out into the field and look at the various social enterprises in Malaysia. And the couple of most common ones is poverty alleviation, which is not surprising. But then after that is education and sustainability. In fact, we just wrapped up our accelerator. We just picked our accelerator participants, 25 social enterprises from across Malaysia that we're going to fly to Cyberjaya for 4 months, and almost 1/3 of them are on sustainability or clean energy. So that's very interesting. So on to social entrepreneurship now. How do we encourage more youth to get involved in social entrepreneurship?
I think we have to make them understand what social entrepreneurship is about. I think the level of understanding amongst young Malaysians as to what social entrepreneurship is very, very low at the moment. You guys have done a study after we did the Global Entrepreneurship Summit here. I think MaGIC did a study as well. And the level of awareness on social entrepreneurship is extremely low. People don't know what a social entrepreneurship is. If you go out there and ask, what is a social entrepreneurship? They won't be able to answer you. Some people will be like, okay, it's when companies give anak yatim during puasa month, some buka puasa, that's social entrepreneurship, you know? It isn't. So I think you have to clearly define what social entrepreneurship is. And that's not just about awareness. That's not just about telling people what it is, but it's also about making sure we are clear regulatory in terms of the regulatory environment, what social entrepreneurship is. At the moment, if you register a social entrepreneurship, you can't register it as a social entrepreneurship in Malaysia. You have to register it as a foundation, as a sole proprietorship, as a Sendirian Berhad, as a company limited by guarantee. All these different organizations can be a social entrepreneurship. There are some other countries around the region who are much more advanced than us. Thailand, for instance, they have a definition for social entrepreneurship. And you can register as a social entrepreneurship. You can exist as a legal entity as a social entrepreneurship. And there are regulatory and legal frameworks which recognize social enterprise as such. In Malaysia, unfortunately, that's not the case. So I think the first stage of your very own blueprint that MaGIC launched, Social Enterprise Blueprint, is about creating that awareness and ensuring that awareness is not just prevalent amongst Malaysians, but it's also reflected in the regulatory environment. Secondly, it's also about harnessing this energy that young people today. I think one big positive development in Malaysia today is that young people want to change the world. They want to change the world for the better. And they want to be able to do so without having to beg, without having to go to foundations, without having to be a non-profit. They want to make a career out of doing good. That's social entrepreneurship. Running a business out of doing something positive for your community. That encapsulates, I know there's many different definitions, but that's my operational definition for social entrepreneurship. So I think awareness needs to be there. So we need to go down to the ground. We need to work with the universities. My ministry ran a conference recently, which MaGIC took part in, Cheryl spoke at. This is not enough. We have to ingrain it as a mainstream choice of career for young people. And it's tough enough to get young people to be involved in entrepreneurship, let alone social entrepreneurship. You know, young people in Malaysia, I think only 30% think of entrepreneurship as a viable career. And I think the rate of early stage entrepreneurship activity in Malaysia is extremely low, something like 8%. Compared to Philippines, it's 18%. So young people in Malaysia still feel it's risky. I don't want to start a business. I don't know where to raise money from. But guess what? We have one of the biggest supporting environment for you to become an entrepreneur in Malaysia. I do not know of any other country which has multiple entrepreneur development organizations from SME Corp, PUNB, Tekun, Amanah Ikhtiar, Mara, etc., and also MaGIC, where they support entrepreneurs. But because we are a makan gaji society, we are a makan gaji society in a sense that I want a salaried job with a GLC, with the MNC, or with government because I feel secure. You're not taking risk. The definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who takes risk, who has an idea, goes beyond the ideation phase, raises the money, runs a business. Add to that the component of wanting to change the world, social entrepreneurship. So I think we really need to go down there, encourage people and say, look, you have the environment. Yes, it is a risk, but you know, if you don't try, you'll not succeed. And also reward failure. I think one big stigma that we have in Malaysian society, Asian society, is failure is something that is negative. But in entrepreneurship, you have to be prepared to fail. Those who have succeeded in Silicon Valley, Cheryl, Ion, I think he's been involved in Australia. You know, you have ideas that fail all the time. But if you have a system where failure is punished, then it becomes extremely debilitating to create an environment where entrepreneurs can flourish. This is why I've also been pushing for certain changes to laws like the Bankruptcy Act. If you're bankrupt in Malaysia, it's a lifelong death sentence. You can't be discharged as a bankrupt in Malaysia easily. It's so difficult to be discharged as a bankrupt. You live under this sword of Damocles of bankruptcy. You cannot raise money, you can't borrow money, you can't start over again. There's no second chance. In many countries, there's an automatic discharge. After 3 years, after 5 years, after 7 years, you discharge, clean slate, start again. I think we have to change that. Otherwise, it's difficult for people to risk being an entrepreneur in Malaysia.
You should be our SC ambassador. You speak about social entrepreneurship better than anyone that I know, actually. So YB brought up the social enterprise blueprint, which was launched on 13th of May by the Prime Minister, and it's available online on our website if you want a copy of that. But we also have physical copies available if you want. So you spoke about how to encourage more youth think about social entrepreneurship as a viable career. And this question is actually from one of our interns, also a budding social entrepreneur. He founded a NGO called Siswa Belia, which has done pretty well up in Kedah. So his question is, how do we actually change that perception that social entrepreneurship is actually a viable career for young people?
Well, I think nothing speaks better for success than demonstrating success stories. Yes. So I think we have to celebrate success stories in social enterprise. Social enterprise in Malaysia is still in its infancy, but there have been many, many projects, started small, that have started to show some success. So I've taken some of these guys on board in My Rakan Muda as mentors. So you have BGBG Initiative, you have Epic Homes, who have done great work in social enterprise. Just to give some of you examples, if you don't know already. BGBG is an enterprise, which is a social enterprise, so it's for profit. They want to change the world through sustainable living. So they upcycle, they build furniture, they make products through recycled or upcycled material. So one of a fantastic example that BGBG sells are bags, dispatch bags,
we actually have an example.
You have an example? Yeah, tote bags, which are made from banners. If you go around Malaysia, Malaysia is a banner country. Every event must have bunting, must have banner, preferably with the minister's photo, otherwise cannot, Where do you think, there must be a graveyard for these banners? They've been like, 1 billion banners produced over the last 5 years. So what BGBG has done is that they've taken these banners and they've made it into, on cue, they've made it into these wonderful tote bags, and they sell it. And it's really nice, it's fashionable. Obviously, this one doesn't have a face of a politician, thank God. But you have these, and it's dedicated to profit. They want to make a profit because they want to run a business, but it's dedicated towards sustainable living.
That's the other one that they made.
This is made from car seat belts. So car seat belts from cars that are decommissioned or cars that are no longer used. So you've got this wonderful lady's purse, or it's man bag, whichever one you want to call it, made from a seat belt. So seat belt bag. So this is social enterprise. Wonderful. That's BGBG. And you have Epic Homes, which obviously builds homes through clever architectural design, raise money. So they've been working in Kelantan. We're going to do some flood relief homes with them. You've got Tony Buck in Sabah. You've got Try Mabul, which works with kids on Mabul Island and teaching them vocational skills. You've got Tanoti, which showcases crafts. So you've got a lot of these companies which are already there. They're not making money. I think the rate of the number of companies, social enterprises, which are actually making profit right now is low. But that's not an excuse for you not to try. I think we should have to encourage social enterprise. So I think one way of doing it is to celebrate success. So one, it's also about celebrating the successes that we mentioned, but also to create a network and create that environment. It's not just about awareness. You have to create an environment, an ecosystem which is sustainable for social enterprise in Malaysia. And then I think young people will be more than willing to come forward. And the last thing I want to say is about how you teach this. I've always had this problem about teaching entrepreneurship, because there's actually a philosophical problem. Can you teach entrepreneurship? You know, can you teach somebody how to run a good business? Some people say yes. If you can't teach entrepreneurship, then why do you have business schools? Why do you have MBAs? Why do people go to Harvard Business School or try to go to Harvard Business School? Why do you have entrepreneurship modules in schools? But some people say it's intrinsic. You either have it or you don't. You know, you either have that entrepreneurship skill or you don't. I'm somewhere in between. You know, you're either built an entrepreneur or you're not. But there are certain things that you can teach people in terms of entrepreneurship. Obviously, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to know skills about how to run a company. These are things that you can teach people. How to do accounts, how to ensure that you're organizationally, you're sound. These are things that you can teach in theory. But how do we do it for social entrepreneurship? You know, how do we bring it to schools? How do we bring it to universities? I would like for MaGIC, maybe under Ihon, to propose and work together with the Ministry of Education to encourage young people, because at school, you're already having that element of volunteerism, of civics, of wanting to change the world. We teach our kids at school to be better than just their books. You have to be a good person and change your society. We teach them that already. We also teach them to be business people, because some schools, they have co-ops, where schools, they run their stationery store, their tuck shop and all that. The schools, the students run it themselves. So it's all about marrying those two together. So there must be a way of teaching social enterprise or exposing young people to social enterprise at school where it's experiential. So I would like to suggest that, suggest it to schools where it's not in theory. In theory, nothing works. So you can't do it in theory. You can't teach social enterprise on the blackboard. It has to be an experiential module, something for you to think about and suggest to the ministry.
It's something that we're actually planning about right as you speak. One of the things that we are thinking about is how do we allow people to try and fail in a safe environment. So we will provide the mentoring and everything else, but you just have to have the drive to start something. And if you fail, the worst case scenario is you continue on.
Can you have that for politicians as well, to try and fail in a safe environment? Can I run for an election where I can lose in a safe environment without losing my job?
So the next question, I kind of am cheating on, because I just met with one of your officers to discuss collaboration with KBS and how we can bring social entrepreneurship into more youth. But is social entrepreneurship going to be a focus for the Ministry of Youth and Sports moving forward?
I think I always stick to the principle that we don't want to overlap.
Yes.
I think not a lot, but some of the problems that I've observed in government after being in government for 2 years is a lot of overlap in terms of government programs. A lot of people trying to do the same things in different ways, often doing the same things because they want to justify their existence. They have to do it, but really, somebody else is doing it much better. So I think that social enterprise is a universe where MaGIC can take the lead and should be taking a lead, because you already have your SE initiative, you already have your blueprint. What we want to do is work together with you and supplement that by getting young people involved in your ecosystem and channeling young people towards it. We don't want to be driving the blueprint, we don't want to be driving the initiative, yes, because that's your job.
Yes.
And why should we be doing the same thing? When we did the conference, I said, invite MaGIC, get them involved, get Cheryl to speak at our conference, because they're the owner of social enterprise within the Malaysian government. So for the Ministry of Youth and Sports, we'd love to work with you by channeling our young people who are involved in our programs, promoting it here, so that you can run the programs here. I think we have to be very clear about what the right hand, left hand is doing. Right hand, left hand doing the same thing, then you get chaos.
Yeah, we're actually about to launch startup guides as well later this year, and we're hoping that KBS will come on board to help us, channel the database as well. So a question from the crowd, from Redza. What are the areas of social impact that you think is being under focus by the people? So he listed a few. Education, poverty, women, youth is widely known issue. Any areas that you think deserve attention as well?
Yep. Health. In particular, public health. This is something that is very important to me because as sports minister, I have a responsibility for public health as well. We have the highest rate of obesity in Southeast Asia. Look around you, yeah. We have the highest incidence of diabetes in Southeast Asia, one of the highest level of cardiovascular disease and also hypertension. This is a problem because it's difficult for me to find athletes, one. But more importantly, it's a problem because it's a ticking time bomb. Remember I told you just now about future scenario planning? This is not what we're thinking about. When we talk about obesity today, it's increased public health expenditure bill tomorrow. Somebody has to pay for it. Obese kids today will become your diabetic patients in the future. They'll become your heart patients in the future. A lot of people still go to government hospitals because government hospitals are subsidized. Who do you think pays for this? You pay for it. Taxpayers pay for it. If you do not arrest this alarming rate of non-communicable diseases on the rise, lifestyle diseases on the rise, we become an unproductive country. We have to pay a big bill later on, and we become a country which is unhealthy and inefficient. So for me, public health is a big issue. Not just public health threats like MERS, like AIDS, but more fundamentally lifestyle diseases. This affects not just sports, not just private. You know, some people tell me, hey, why is your Fit Malaysia butting into people's lives? If I want to be fat, let me be fat lah. You know? So I have to tell them, hey, if you are fat, then as a taxpayer, I got to pay for your ass later on in life, you know. And they're like, oh, okay, I get it. You know? So I got to get you fit now so that I don't have to pay for your hospital bill when you're 50. So I think public health is an issue that you have to look at. And just coming back to it on the youth part, I know it's common public interest, but I think one part that I just wanted to flag is working with troubled kids. I think a lot of people have forgotten about this. We're focused on excellence, we're focusing on university, we're focusing on trying to get young people become entrepreneurs, but there are a lot of kids who still have a lot of problems. And the problems stem from the fact that their environment is not conducive. You know, there's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a society to raise a Malaysian. It's not just the parents, it's not just the kids, it's the entire society. If that ecosystem is not working, then the kid's not going to grow up properly. So we ran a pilot program last year called Project Angkat dan Upaya, PADU short, where we work with the most troubled kids in the most troubled neighborhoods with youth workers, two kids per youth worker, and we give them emotional support. We try to develop their talent so that they can work their way out of a black spot. We work with kids who have been involved in teen pregnancy, juvenile delinquents, criminal cases. We work with the really, really down and out, the toughest kids. And we managed to turn some of them around. So I think when you talk about social enterprise, public interest, I think do not forget that in any society, you always have to look behind and look at people left behind and never ever leave a single Malaysian behind. It's so important that we bring them with us.
Most social entrepreneurs in Malaysia are youth. We actually did a survey of the hundreds or so social enterprises in Malaysia, and I think more than half of them are actually 30 years old and under. And you touched about it already just now, but why do you think that more and more young people are going to social entrepreneurship?
I think because it's easier to start ground up. When you start from scratch, when you're a startup, it's easier for you to combine the social value and the economic value, which leads you to become a social enterprise. I think many people who are above the age of 30, they're already running businesses. It's very difficult to disengage from a pure for-profit model into becoming a social enterprise. So I think one, it's a function of the fact that you start from a startup. It's easier to fashion your DNA as a social enterprise. So that's really why a lot more young people. And I think for young people, this is what I said earlier, this drive to want to change the world is more pronounced right now. I'm not saying that older people my generation, their 40s, we don't want to change the world. But I suppose maybe we've been jaded, or maybe we think that the way to do that is through charity or through CSR. It's a thing on the side. It's not inbuilt into the DNA of our organization. It's rather something that we think of as, I've got a little bit of profit, let me put that aside as CSR, and I'll change the world that way. But young people nowadays, you have a chance to go from startup, you have a chance to build that DNA from scratch. So I think that's why young people want to do it. And I think this wanting to change the world is so important that we develop platforms and organizations and industries like social entrepreneurship, because changing the world, and this is an aside, I'm going on a tangent really, but changing the world can mean a positive thing and a negative thing. Young people change the world positively when they start a social enterprise. Young people change the world when they decide to take 2 years off their life and become a teacher through Teach for Malaysia. Young people change the world when they take a year out of their life to join Ministry of Youth and Sports program, MyCore, to go to the darkest of Africa to volunteer. But young people can also change the world by going to Syria or Iraq, fighting for ISIS and blowing themselves up. That's changing the world, but not changing the world in the right way. That imperative to want to change the world is strong. The fire of idealism that burns in the belly of young people is strong. It's who taps into it that gets their attention. Is it going to be positive initiatives like social enterprise, or is it going to be evil initiatives like ISIS? So, it's important that we channel this energy somewhere.
Absolutely. So on that note, so we talk about all this, right? And it's important for that we start young. So there's a paribahasa that my staff made me read. They say you must say this because my BM is not very good. Melentur buluh biarlah dari rebongnya.
Not bad. Well done,
Kan? Do you think social entrepreneurship should be included in the national curriculum, or should we make it an informal learning thing?
Yeah, we spoke about it briefly just now, and I was so happy that you said that you have this initiative to try and propose something to the ministry. It should be there. I don't know if it should be in the curriculum, because our curriculum is so fully loaded right now. I look at my son, I feel sorry for him sometimes. He's only in standard 2. So it's, and you don't want a stage where, things happen, so you lump it on the curriculum. Parents say, things change all the time, flip-flop curriculum and all that. It can be there. It can be part of the existing curriculum, maybe under civics, I don't know, under economics, where it is, but experiential learning. It has to be done in a way that's experiential, that's experience. Experiential learning is experience rather than Blackboard. Blackboard doesn't work for social entrepreneurship. I think it should be there somewhere so that young people know what it's about.
A less serious question, one from the crowds, from Joe. Did you read the article, I'm going to swear now. Did you read the article titled 10 Reasons Why KJ is a Badass? If so, how did you feel about it? Apparently there's this article about you.
Well, yeah, I did read the article. I read the article. Someone forwarded it to me, so I read it, and I had no choice but to read it. Yeah, I was, it was a flattering article. But this is the thing in politics. The thing in politics is that rule number 1 is you cannot believe in your own hype. I think if you believe in your own hype, you lose sense of reality. It's also the same for entrepreneurs. Do not believe in your own hype. If you believe in your own hype, you enter the most misleading, most misleading place that you can be as an entrepreneur, as a politician, which is an echo chamber. What is an echo chamber? An echo chamber is where you sit in a room, you say something, and you hear what you say. That's all you hear. So if you say, I'm the best, you'll be like, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. So don't believe your hype. You're not nearly as good as you think you are. You're not nearly as good as sliced bread. There's always room for improvement. So always take all these things, whether it's an article or whether it's affirmation, it's nice. everybody likes affirmation, everybody likes a pat on the back, everybody likes to be flattered. But there's always room for improvement. Never ever think that you've reached there, because you're not there yet. Nobody's there yet.
So on that note, as a minister, one of the questions here from Alex, I'm sure the workload and stress can really get to you. What activities do you do to relax or unwind? I assume football.
Football sometimes doesn't unwind me. But I like to exercise. I like to run, and I like to cycle. So it's the one time when I can't. I'm not interrupted by this because I can't read my messages and all that. Nobody can call me. So it's very therapeutic for me. And of course, spending time with family, kids, friends, it's important, because when you're in politics, everyone wants a piece of your time, and people come unannounced, your office, blah blah blah. You have political friends, you have real friends, you have fake friends. So I think it's important that at the end of the day, you sit down with what is real, and root yourself in what is real, and say, this is real. At the end of the day, if everything comes crashing down, if in 5 years' time I'm no longer a minister, if in next elections I lose, I've still got this, and this will not go away.
That's awesome. The next, I guess, on that similar note, there's a question here, which is, what are the 3 main values that you live by that you would like to more youth to embody?
One is empathy. Empathy is so important. What is empathy? In simple language, empathy is putting yourself in other people's shoes. And it's so important for Malaysia that you practice empathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is not pity. Sympathy and pity is like looking at somebody else and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you." Empathy is actually saying, hey, what happens if I'm in his position? What would I feel like? And I think empathy needs to be practiced. If you practice empathy, your first question, your early question about all these sensitive things won't come about. Because if you practice empathy, you will not say things like that. You would say, if I say this, how would a person who professes that religion feel? You'll say, oh my God, I'd feel really offended, so I wouldn't say it. So I think empathy is so important. I remember, I just give you a small anecdote. Before not the last election, the election before, 2008, there was a case of a temple in Selangor, which was going to be demolished. And legally, the state had every right to demolish the temple, because the court had decided that the developer had the right to demolish that temple. The developer, I think in that case, had acquired that estate. But the planned, scheduled demolishing was to take place 3 days before Deepavali. I remember I called the then Menteri Besar of Selangor and said, I couldn't get him, so I spoke to one of his officers and said, look, do you think that it's a wise idea to demolish this temple 3 days before Deepavali? And he said, no, legally we are right, and I'm going to do it. And he demolished that temple. And as a result of that happened just before the elections. As a result of that, we lost the majority of Indian votes. We, as in Barisan Nasional, lost the majority of Indian votes at the elections because it went viral. That CD went viral. And I had to explain this to my Muslim constituents in Rembau. They said, what's the big deal? I said, imagine your mosque or your surau is demolished 3 days before Hari Raya. How do you think you would feel? You think you'd still vote for that government? So obviously not. So it's all about empathy, turning it around and putting it on the other side. Secondly, I think it's the value of integrity. This is often said. Integrity is not just about being clean. It's not just about being transparent. It's not just fighting corruption. Integrity is also sticking true to your word. Being somebody that you can trust. Somebody you can trust, not just trust with people's money, but trust as in this is a person who walks the talk. This is a person who can get the job done. He's a person who says what he thinks and will do what he says. So it's important to have integrity. Integrity for young people. I don't know how you teach it. Again, it's something that's experiential. You know, you have to have integrity. And third is the value of commitment, seeing it through. I come back to biggest problem in Malaysia is great plans, bad execution, because we don't lean in. When you decide on doing something, lean in. I always tell people, lean in. What does lean in mean? When you commit to something, commit. You know, lean in. Don't commit and say, oh, yeah, maybe, yeah, okay, let's see how it goes. You know, do it. Do it. And I think that commitment must be there to see things through. I've seen too many things where, since Ihon is an expert on Malay sayings, now, I'll give you another one. Hangat-hangat tai ayam. Hot chicken shit. Yeah. Which is basically
I'm going to be using that a lot now.
Basically a way of saying, you know, you start something, but you don't see it through. One of the biggest problems of the Malaysians today is that big launch, VVIP come, big ribbon, bunga mangga, kompang all, 3 months down the line, hey, what happened to that? You know, so I think those three things. Important.
Are there any key initiatives from the government we can expect to promote more social entrepreneurship?
Well, I'm happy you asked that. I think one, the awareness is something that we need to do this year. We need to ensure that awareness is heightened this year. But I think taking it from there, once the awareness is heightened, there are a few things that I would like the government to do, which I hope that you can suggest along with me. One is the support from the financial ecosystem for social entrepreneurs. I think a lot of banks still are very, very averse to funding social entrepreneurship because they do not understand the model. I think a lot of bank managers, they understand businesses, they don't understand social entrepreneurship. They think it's something dodgy. They're like, are you a charity, you know, why you want to make money now, you know? So they're not quite sure what it is. So the legal status of social entrepreneurships must be resolved by government. So we're going to be looking into that. Secondly, I think we should also create specific domains for social entrepreneurship to thrive in. A lot of countries create certain domains in order to support certain types of businesses. So for instance, government has a lot of government procurement. We have a lot of money to procure things, services, goods, through the government. So we can do that for social enterprise. Once we resolve the issue of social enterprise as a legal entity, government can use procurement to grow social enterprise. Social enterprises are small, so sometimes they have problems to pitch for big government jobs. They're up against, thank you very much, thank you. They're up against big companies with a big paid up capital, with a lot of access to funds, with a lot of access to politicians. But you know, you should, certain things which social entrepreneurs can do in terms of delivering public goods, delivering public programs. I think we should have a domain that is exclusive for social entrepreneurs. These are ideas that we can discuss, which I'll be suggesting to the government as well.
That'd be amazing. In fact, one of the things that we're trying to do now is pushing a legal status for social enterprises. That's one. And it's all in a blueprint. One of the things as well is procurement. We are currently collecting a database of social enterprises so we can make it publicly available. We want to encourage even government, for example, to do even catering. Why don't you, if you want to do catering, we spend millions of ringgits every year as government ministries to procure catering. Can you cater from social enterprises? Procuring of VIP gifts, can you procure from BG, for example? As you guys leave today, we have a couple of gifts for you guys. These are all from social enterprises as well. And we highly encourage you guys to actually contact these social enterprises and make sure you get this stuff from them as well if you're thinking about providing gifts for your people.
So on that note, I'm going to make an ad hoc announcement which is under my purview right now. Based on that, you've given me an idea. So in 2017, we're hosting the Southeast Asia Games. We're hosting the SEA Games in Malaysia. And we'll be needing a lot of staff for the SEA Games, obviously, because we're becoming hosts, so we'll need a lot of gifts, catering, etc., etc. Now, let's work together, and I'll carve out a procurement that will be just exclusive for social enterprise to work on the SEA Games.
We have a deal.
Okay.
So we'll sit down and I'll
Sit down. We'll come up with a percentage
Absolutely.
and say, social enterprise only to pitch
I'll go
for.
find all these social enterprises for you,
Thank
however
you.
many you want.
Thank you very much.
That would be amazing. That's incredible. So, what do you think are some of the key initiatives? You have mentioned the legal entity. We're talking about capital as well, which is very actually encouraging that in RMK 11 Malaysian plan, one of the things that's in there is innovative social finance. Can we look into public-private partnership to deliver more effective social initiatives and social services, for example? Are there any key initiatives apart from those that you've mentioned so far that you think we can do to further support social entrepreneurship?
Apart from the initiatives that were announced and initial allocation that has been allocated to MaGIC, I think got 20 million, right, from the PM. I think once we resolve the issue of legal status, then we can start talking about fiscal or tax incentives for social enterprise. I think the stumbling block right now is really the legal status of social enterprise before we can talk about incentives. Once that's out of the way, I think more in terms of funding mechanisms can be thought about. Even right now, it's very difficult to get public-private because the private will be asking, what is it? So we're still at square one right now.
Which we have an announcement later if you stay on until 6 p.m. or closer to 6 p.m. Now another question two questions actually from Ashok Kumar. One is a less serious one and one's a kind of serious one. The less serious question is, you look like Clark Kent. Given the role, will you play the role of Superman? And the most serious question is, there are tons of events happening at KL, Putrajaya, Cyberjaya. How or what are the plans to bring in or leverage the activities to the rural areas or those in Kampong?
Yeah, first question, thank you very much. The size of my head is the size of this room right now. But the second question on how do we bring more events out to the rural areas, it's difficult. You really have to push it out there because everyone is attracted on bringing events to the capital city, to Putrajaya. When we do Rakan Muda, when we do our youth day celebrations, we make it a policy that we celebrate it at the state level. If we have money, we'll celebrate it at the district level. We do Rakan Muda, we bring workshops to Sabah, Sarawak, to Kelantan, to Terengganu. So we're very conscious of the fact that we have to push out there because at the moment it's not demand pull. Demand pull meaning it's people are not going there because there's a strong demand for it. You have to go out there and push these programs out to the rural areas. But that's what government is there for. We serve the underserved areas where the private sector will not necessarily bring events. But it's also important to think out of the box. Recently we've been promoting a lot of motorsports. Motorsports is associated always with Sepang, Grand Prix, MotoGP in Sepang. But now we've been investing a little bit more into motocross. And motocross is a wonderful sport where you can bring motorsports to the rural areas. Yeah. I recently sponsored or helped and officiated at a motocross function in Kedah. Really deep in the jungle of Kedah, the whole village turned out because there's no other entertainment, motorsports, So everybody came out. So I think it's very important to look at activities where you can do it in situ, at the place itself, rather than trying to bring something which is alien to that place where, there's no traction. So, people out there, you have people who are, involved in that community. It's very, very important to get community buy-in for events. I think the worst thing that you can do is bring a glamorous event to an area where there's no community buy-in, there's no participation, and it's just touch and go, and that's it.
Speaking of Clark Kent, your looks is actually very popular. One of my staff actually said, nasi bulan puasa.
Nasib
Bulan puasa.
Nasib bulan puasa. Oh, nasib.
And then another one of my staff thinks that he
That's
can
a-
rival you on the tall, dark, and handsome part. So
Okay. Nice.
he was initially planning to wear his tall, dark, and handsome
Oh, right,
T-shirt,
okay.
and
Yeah,
he said, "I'm gonna show him who is the tall, dark, and handsome."
Take a photo later.
So the next question is, we have been well informed, this is from the crowd, we have been well informed about your involvement in politics. Can you tell us a little bit about you as a businessman? Are there any businesses that you are involved in, and what are the roles that you play in each business?
I left business obviously when I became a minister. I was in finance before that. And I made some investments in telecommunications and media business. One of my favorite business or projects that I worked on was in media and involved sports actually. It was a precursor to social enterprise. It was not a pure social enterprise, but it was doing business with a social objective. And that was when we worked on a TV program called My Team. This was, I don't know, about 8 years ago maybe, where before sports reality TV really took off, we were the first, my friend Jason Lowe and I, we were the first entrepreneurs who produced a program which had sports and reality TV in the same. So we went around the whole country looking for football players, and we tried them out. We got people to become this team called My Team. We trained them for 3 months, and they played the national team, the national under-23 team, in the final in Bukit Jalil. These are all, people who are dispatched, people who are clerks, people who are forklift drivers, people who are jual nasi kukus, boat driver, all these, ordinary Joes. 3 months, trained them, played the under-23 team. Bukit Jalil was full. They lost 2-1, almost beat the national team. We made money from the show. We sold the show, the rights to the show to Indonesia. The social enterprise part was because Malaysian football is so terrible that we were directed, towards the good of improving football in Malaysia. So that was a business that we ran as well. So yeah, I was involved in a few things, and now, pretty much out of it. Yeah.
Full-time minister.
Yeah.
So the next question is very similar. We're coming towards the end now. If you're a social entrepreneur, what social enterprise will you work on, or social issues will you try to tackle?
Yeah, I'll come back to the point which somebody raised earlier about public interest issues. I would do a social enterprise for health and for fitness. Because, again, I feel very strongly about getting Malaysians moving, about especially young Malaysians moving. And I'll use this opportunity to advertise something. This year, first year, which we will celebrate a National Sports Day. Every second Saturday of every October, every year, will be National Sports Day. We have to choose a Saturday because Saturday is a common rest day. There are some states which work on Sunday. So this year it's the 10th of October, which is National Sports Day. Now every single Malaysian must do something on National Sports Day. Get moving on National Sports Day. It doesn't matter whether you run, whether you cycle, whether you do badminton, or whether you do aerobics or Zumba, just do something. So if I was social enterprise, I know there are a lot of pressing concerns with poverty, pressing concerns with education, pressing concerns with young people, environment. But for me right now, I'd be thinking of something about public health in terms of fitness.
Yeah. We could do something out in the front of our oval for 10th of October.
Cheryl, you guys, MaGIC, you have to commit yourself to doing something on the 10th of October.
Done.
Yoga, Pilates, something on your oval.
We do yoga every Thursday at the fake grass that we have out here, because then whether it rain or shine, it happens. So another question from the crowd: YB, if you believe Malaysia has potential to be a great progressive country, what do you believe is hindering this process?
I think sometimes it's ourselves. A country is only as good as its people, and it's not just. I know some of you thinking, it's not people as politicians. You're hindering it. It's collectively. It's collectively, and I always like to use this example. People say, Malaysians are still racist or still think in racial terms because political parties are based on ethnicity. That's why we're racist, that's why we still think of ethnic terms. It's always passing it back to politicians. I take some of the blame. Yes, politicians are part of the problem. But politicians are a reflection of society. Politics is a reflection of society. There will be no politics based on ethnicity if that wasn't how society itself still thinks of itself. And how many of us really, honestly, maybe in the confines of MaGIC, which is truly a multiracial environment where people work together, but how many of us really believe that Malaysians aren't separated by ethnic, religious, and other silos outside? You just have to go anywhere in Malaysia and look anywhere. You go to universities, you go to schools, you go to that crucible of national unity, which is the National Service at PLKN program, and you will see people, Chinese, Chinese, Indian, Indian, Malay, Malay, it's still silofied. So really, the biggest hindrance is ourselves, and we have to get over our hang-ups. Our hang-ups, and there are many, many hang-ups, and we have to overcome these hang-ups to become more progressive and to focus on what is important. Think about it. Think about what has dominated public discourse over the last 2 weeks. Has it been really about something important? Has it been about innovation? Has it been about what research and development can possibly propel our economy over the next 25 years? Or has it been about what my gymnast decides to wear when she competes at the SEA Games? What is important in the world here? Let's get our priorities straight. So that's not the government, that's Malaysians. That is pure, unadulterated Malaysians, judgmental, not focusing on the real thing, focusing on things that are not important.
We need more people like you, and I can keep going, and I think we should keep talking to you and make you talk more as well. So the last question now, it can't be called a wise words with series if we don't hear some wise words from you, which we have heard a lot about. But to cap it off, to finish off, are there any wise words you have for the future generation and also especially the budding social entrepreneurs? There's quite a few in here that I can see already, faces very familiar to me in the room here today.
We're always asked to give wise words, advice to young people. You can go through all the cliches about, be yourself, seize the day, all of that. But, there are cliches precisely because it's true. Cliches are cliches because they are true. So all of that. But at the end of the day, I think if there's one really, really important message from me is that whatever you do, whether you end up being an executive, whether you end up being an entrepreneur, whether you end up being a politician, you must always remember that you are a child of this universe existing in a bigger universe that is around you. No man is an island. You don't live for yourself. You live for those around you as well. And when you try to achieve greatness, because everybody wants to try and achieve greatness, everybody wants to leave their imprints in the sands of time. And I sound like a Hallmark card with cliches right now. But it doesn't mean that you have to win a Nobel Prize. It doesn't mean that you have to develop a killer app. It doesn't mean that you have to solve the Middle East crisis. Greatness is leaving an imprint on people around you. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness and generosity to your neighbor, to community around you, is just as great as solving world hunger. Always do something greater than yourself.
Thank you so much, YB. Thank you. We just remain seated. So first of all, thank you so much for spending time. And this is a kind of discourse that we hope to bring at the Wise Words With series, which we try to organize every month. Although the last 2 weeks has been happening 2 weeks in a row. So thank you so much for spending time with us and also having that discourse with us, because this is a very important conversation that needs to happen. I also want to thank my team for putting this together. I always say I work with the most talented people, and they literally are the most talented, most hardworking people that I know. So thank you so much. The media are moving to the press con room upstairs. And the other people I need to thank is the social entrepreneurs in this room. There's many of you guys in this room, and I want to thank you for the work, the important work that you do in promoting social entrepreneurship. YB was saying that one of the most important steps is for us to start educating people on what is social enterprise. And we launched the Malaysian Social Enterprise Blueprint with the Prime Minister Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Sri Najib on the 13th of May, as most of you guys in this room actually attended. And as a follow-on to that, the first, today we're launching the Social Enterprise 101 or Maklumat Asas Social Enterprise as a little easy to read guide to help people understand what is a social enterprise. In the book, we have included topics such as what is a social enterprise, what are misconceptions, what is CSR and what is social enterprise, why are they different, what's happening around the world in terms of social entrepreneurship, what is impact investment, how is impact investment growing around the world. Rockefeller Foundation predict that it's going to be $1 trillion US dollars by 2020. How do we tap into those kind of impact investment? How to spot a social enterprise? What are the common business models for social enterprises? What is the social enterprise sector landscape like in Malaysia? We did a survey of most of the social enterprise in Malaysia. It's in there. There's a quick summary of that. What are the emerging trends in social enterprise, and what are the challenges and opportunities here in Malaysia? So we would like now invite our CEO, Cheryl, to present YB a copy of the booklet.